Okay, awesome. I'm going to get us started. Thank you all so much for joining another amazing week of our anti-imperialist campaign action weeks. These weeks, as all of you know by now, are designed to go deeper with each of our Code Pink campaigns, learn more about the people behind the movements and how all of our liberation work is connected to Palestine, Venezuela, to peace with China, to peace with the planet, and to our own communities, like we're going to talk about tonight. If you've missed any of the webinars or calling parties or didn't grab some of our resources, I'll be dropping those links throughout the night. And stay tuned to the end where you'll receive all the updates for our actions for Cut the Pentagon that will go throughout all of this week and next. I'm going to quickly go over some norms for tonight, and then I will pass it to Danica to get us started. But as always, please be respectful. This isn't a debate, but a discussion. We're not here to mediate arguments, but instead you're here to learn from each other. Be kind, be curious, be ready to take action. And above all, if you didn't listen to anything else, just please stay muted throughout the session. We record and live stream these classes so folks can, or educational series, so folks can watch them later on our website. So please stay muted. Drop your questions, comments in the chat, and we'll get started. I'm going to pass it over to Danica.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Danica. I'm the National Co-Director of Code Pink. And we're here to talk about defunding the Pentagon in light of everything that is happening, both in DC and Chicago. And we hope we can look at what's happening in our cities as sort of a case study, because we know it's not just happening here. The Trump administration is trying to export this violence all over the country. The Trump administration first deployed the National Guard to the streets of DC under the guise of fighting crime. What we saw instead was the blatant violence and intimidation against communities already under attack. Then Trump tried to send the National Guard to Chicago. He did, but they're not doing anything yet. He's trying to appeal to the Supreme Court for them to actually go out onto the streets. But right now, ICE is roaming our streets in Chicago and kidnapping our neighbors. Our cities have known for a long time, both in DC and Chicago, that what works when it comes to lowering violent crime rates is investment into life-affirming programs and deliberate moves towards equity and justice. The flooding of our cities with military personnel and ICE is directly tied to the country's ever-inflating Pentagon budget. The oppression and violence we ship around the world does come home, and we have to defund the Pentagon and invest in our communities if we want to achieve peace and justice. With us to talk about the state of DC and Chicago and the importance of cutting spending for militarism and tactics for getting the feds out of our cities, we have Afeni Evans, Olivia DeNucci, and Alderman Byron St. Joe Lopez. Afeni Evans is an activist and organizer, a Movement for Black Lives electoral justice table member, former regional field leader for the Green Party, and forever frontline from the George Floyd uprisings. Afeni's passion for advocacy and her voice is lended to all marginalized people, from our Palestinian siblings to protesters being brutalized in Nigeria. Afeni's voice knows no border. Afeni is passionate about equity, anti-racism, and leadership development. Olivia is the Code Pink DC coordinator who focuses on the roots of injustice, community building, and direct actions. And she came into this work after living and working abroad as an experimental learning facilitator with college students. She is active in arts and creative communities, building out more local to global solidarity in DC and embracing peace economies through deepening and weaving relationships. And do we have Alderman Byron here yet? We might have to do this without him, but hopefully he joins later. In case I will do his intro as well. Alderman Byron St. Joe Lopez was elected to Chicago City Council in April 2019 as an adult education teacher in Back of the Yard, Chicago Lawn, and Pilsen in the 2010s. He became active in local politics when he witnessed the ways in which neoliberal con artists were selling out his community members and institutions to allies of disgraced Mayor Rahm Emanuel and the ruling class. He co-founded the bilingual literacy program at the UIC Center for Literacy and also organized at grassroots level to challenge school closures, displacement, privatization, police brutality, immigration rights, workers' rights, and human rights for all. So hopefully if Byron joins us, you all know who he is. Um, oh, hi, Alderman Byron.
Hey, how are you? I'm sorry, I was just finishing up another meeting, and it's great to see you all, and it's an honor to be here with Code Pink and all the freedom fighters. It's good to see you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We just finished introducing you, so thank you for hopping on. Um, So briefly to recap the deployment status of National Guard and ICE to Chicago and DC. The National Guard's been in Chicago, and Trump has threatened to send the National Guard. The National Guard's been in DC for a long time, and Trump has threatened to send the National Guard to Chicago. They're here up north, but haven't been authorized to do anything yet, and Trump is now petitioning the Supreme Court. And ICE is everywhere. They are literally everywhere, kidnapping our neighbors, wearing masks, beating people, terrorizing our neighborhoods, and tear gassing babies who are trying to go to school. So the situation is pretty dire, and this is an example of war spending coming home. Just some brief stats about ICE really quick. If you all remember Trump's big, beautiful bill that passed over the summer, it made ICE's budget bigger than most of the world's militaries, $170 billion in new funding, 45 billion for expanding detention capacity, and 29.9 billion for ICE removal, which is what we're seeing on the streets of Chicago every day. Um, and they're saying they have taken, I think, 3,000 people, but we do not actually know, and things have been very murky and obviously not transparent. So I think we should lay the groundwork from our folks here from DC and Chicago to get a better feeling of what is actually going on from people on the ground. So I'll start with Afeni and Olivia. What have these occupations of the National Guard looked like in DC? How has it affected your communities? And what do the people of Chicago, what should we expect as they come here as well?
Okay. Well, uh, you should expect a lot of very underpaid, very grumpy people coming to your city in uniform. You should expect, what I will say is like, I think there's a different level of cooperation, in DC because our mayor is like passing executive orders to pretty much like solidify ICE's relationship with isolation with MPD and like also welcoming like National Guard enforcement. They're putting together permanent curfews. On Halloween, there were a bunch of youth outside and organizers outside that were terrorized by the National Guard here, and organizers and youth were arrested. So I would say that Chicago's lucky in the fact that they at least have Mayor Brandon Johnson who's speaking up against this, like at least trying to act as an opposition to this, because Mayor Bowser, yeah, sister's trying to repeal sanctuary city status behind the scenes and all different types of stuff. So I think we're dealing with like two slightly different landscapes. And from what I've seen from Chicago, I know a lot of organizers in Chicago as well. Keeping up that like well coordinated top down like community response to ICE. There is some of that here in DC. There's rapid response to ICE and things like that. But just as like culturally acceptable as you can make it, to make sure that your neighbors do not get kidnapped by a unaccountable, like unidentifiable police force in your streets. But yeah.
Thank you, Afeni. I want to pass to Olivia in case you have anything to add. And for people who haven't seen the videos coming out of DC, what are they doing? Like, what is the National Guard doing day to day when you walk around?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The National Guard is there to create fear, to create this illusion that they're going to keep people safe. And Afeni said they're underpaid, and still it costs $1 million a day for them to be here. So they are outside, texting or like scrolling on their phone outside of the metro. For me, I live in one part of the city and I, bike or I walk to work across the city, and I pass a lot of them on my way to work, and they're just a presence. So they're significantly less dangerous than the feds and ICE. And when we say the feds and ICE, these are like 10 almost 10 different departments, whether they are Secret Service, Metropolitan Police Department, Park Police, FBI, Homeland Security, every and all acronym you can imagine, who are carrying out those kidnappings. And for a couple of examples, right in my neighborhood, we have a deep history of Salvadorian uprisings and in Salvadorian communities that have been displaced because of gentrification, but now they're being displaced even more rapidly than they have been before. ICE has been in the community before Trump, but we are seeing like a huge uptick. So like you were saying, like because you already have ICE terrorizing your neighborhoods, the National Guard is the other level of fear tactic that's all throughout. They're especially at metro stations, and now they are assisting in these youth curfews, which have also been in place in the previous administration and under this mayor, like Afeni was saying. But I really think, and we're going to talk about this more, but the money thing is that political education piece we really want to keep reminding people of, in addition to the know your rights, in addition to the numbers people should call if they're seeing ICE. And these are all activated by grassroots organizers. But when we're seeing SNAP benefits be cut and those and healthcare premiums go up, reminding people that the National Guard are set to be in DC through the summer. So that's $1 million a day until then, while our people are going hungry and being unhoused.
Thank you, Olivia and Afeni, for painting that picture for everyone. And Alderman Sigjo Lopez, ICE raids in Chicago have been all over the news and really affecting your ward and where you live. So what do you think viewers around the country need to know about how these raids are affecting Chicago, Pilsen, and other neighborhoods?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's very, very, very important that we exchange information and experiences in DC and LA. We've been talking to people in New York, and how this is intended to destroy communities like us. Is really Project 2025 is a Nazi project, right? They intend to ethnic cleansing people like us, and that's exactly what we feel on the ground. They are chasing people like we are not human beings. Just today, I give examples of today, and we can go on along. But today, for instance, in Melrose Park, they beat up a 53-year-old worker and left him hospitalized. There was so much outrage that I think there's still people protesting right now in Melrose Park. In Chicago, I represent both neighborhoods that are the center of the Mexican American community in the whole Midwest. These are historic port of entries where many immigrants, they were Polish, they were Czechs, they were German. We come through this port of entry. There's small businesses. We're a community of families, many children, many young people in our community. Last week they came just so they see the level of not only an accountability, the level of terror that they're unleashing on American cities. They beat up 2 guards that did not let them in a little strip mall that we have in our community. It's called the Discount Mall. That is a center with dozens of vendors sell their products. They tried to get in, the guards didn't let them in because this is not going out without contestation, right? Remember, in Chicago or in Chicagoland, they killed one of our neighbors, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. They shot 5 times to a young 30-year-old woman who posed no threat to them, that simply was trying to find themselves with multiple masked individuals with guns, and they shot her 5 times. She posed no threat to them. And it is going on and on. They arrested an elected official in a hospital. They have been waiting for people outside of churches, shelters, you name it. These people have no morality. They could care less about the Constitution. When people ask them to judicial grants, they beat up the guards. And what I tell you was remarkable is to see young people, youth, high school students that came in to the help of people. They blocked the entry and they arrested all the U.S. In that day, they arrested U.S. citizens. They didn't arrest any immigrants. And they beat them up. They beat up young people as well. We saw them bleeding. So these people are not here to create any public safety. It has nothing to do with public safety. This is all a distraction from the real crimes committed as we speak. When they caught 1.9 million people who needed access to food with SNAP benefits, they caught. But the people who get actually paid are these mercenaries, because that's who they are. They're people who get paid to meet quotas. And to meet quotas, they do whatever it takes because they see those bonuses up to $50,000 per mercenary. And now we see less people who are quote unquote trained, whatever that means. I think that these people now that we see had no training, they have criminal records actually among the insurrection, just to name a few, Proud Boys, right-wing extremists that don't look at us as human beings. And you can see the way that they operate. In Halloween, when the judge told them, when the judge themselves told them, kids who are going trick or treat do not represent any threat to you. Why you gotta come and hope that you are away from Halloween celebrations and this weekend? What did they do? They went right at it and they started doing the exact same thing the judge told them not to do. They're doing with those quote unquote less lethal, right? So they use tear gas near hospitals, near schools, right? These people are really creating terror in our city. They are intended to do that. And I think that we here in our city, we see our small businesses suffering. People are afraid to go to school, go to church, go to hospitals because of the level of terror. So now, as we speak, I was just talking today with a mother who has undocumented family who was afraid even to go to the grocery store. It was a little bit outside of our district. So now we have to even deliver food to people in their homes because not only they cannot work, they cannot go to school, they cannot go to hospital, they cannot go to church, they cannot even get out of the house because the prospect, and how can children learn like that? How can you, when the prospect is that you may be stopped by a mercenary, right? As you mentioned, slave catchers. And again, I don't know that there's any way that you can train them because these people have a mindset that is to create fear and violence, to crush dissent and use us once again as immigrants as pawns, as scapegoats, as distractions for what they're actually about to do, which is create yet another war in Venezuela or in Colombia and destabilize an entire continent out of resources. These are neo-colonial settlement projects, and we need to stop them here. We need to stop it in our country because here is where we actually, believe it or not, we actually have a voice. So we said we also have people who come out, young students last week, high school students that took the streets. So we see more and more resistance, more mobilizations. We're going to court in the streets, in our legislative bodies, but this is terror that we must fight here now. Chairman Hampton said it well. If we don't stop fascism will stop every single one of us. And what they're doing in Latin America, what they're doing to destabilize the entire region, they did it in Gaza. They already did it in Africa. So that's what we need to make sure that we tell our people. And that's my criticism of Democratic Party. And I rejected the invitation to go to the Non-King's Day because they told me that I cannot speak about something. So I told me, you know what, you can march, but I'm going to march with the people. I'm going to march, but I'm going to march with my people because the drones that are flying in Gaza are the same drones that are flying here in our ward, in our communities. So this is a fight that I think is for all of us. It's all working people. This is a war. This is a war on poor people, and we have Nazi billionaires. That's the only minority destroying our communities are Nazi billionaires who want to terrorize poor communities like ours.
Thank you so much, Alderman Sigcho Lopez. That was very powerful, and I think just to expand on the situation in Chicago, like the alderman said, they are showing up to school pickups and drop-offs, where children are being walked to school by their parents. We've had to do school escorts because parents are afraid to take their kids to school. And the CTU reported a decline in attendance since the ICE raid started. Scaring children out of going to school does not make our community safer. And that's just one way it sort of manifested and hit on that intimidation piece that Olivia and Alderman and Afeni were mentioning. So I hope everyone gets a picture of the situation on the ground in both cities. It's definitely been very dramatic, and you could feel it in the air when you walk outside, how scared people are. So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork, I want to talk about resisting this kind of thing and what has actually worked, because ICE agents are everywhere. They're going to be in the Bay Area. Trump is talking about sending the National Guard to Memphis. So what happens in DC and Chicago is what will happen around the country. And so we have to get our resistance and the things that we do right now. So hopefully we can set a good precedent in both of our cities. So this is a question to everyone, and whoever can chime in first. If it gets quiet for a little, I'll pick on someone. But what have been effective strategies for dealing with these ICE raids specifically? So let's talk about the ICE raids, and then we'll talk about the National Guard as well. But what have been effective strategies for dealing with these ICE raids in DC? I guess Afeni and Olivia. Olivia.
So, I mean, the amount of people who have been abducted and kidnapped, like I don't want to say effective or success, knowing that like so many of them have been taken by the system, right? And so many families have been terrorized and traumatized. So similar to like how in Palestine and in Gaza, the world woke up in response to a genocide that we were funding. It reactivated people. It brought people really deeply together. That I think is what's going on right here now, is that people are turning really hyper local. They are getting trained. They are, learning more about the effects of boycotts and seeing long-term campaigns, seeing the connections of, you talk about like DC being a testing ground, and it's starting here, and the ripple effect to other cities. We know this with Gaza. Gaza was the testing ground for Palantir Technologies to test what they were doing there and take it up on steroids here. So getting people to activate hyper locally. I know, for example, walking around my neighborhood with my megaphone is not just for protests to stand outside the empty buildings, but it's to stand outside of buildings where ICE is going in and screaming and telling folks that they don't have to open their doors, or to let them know that ICE is here, or that they're around. This whole, the golden rule that we might learn early on in life or in school of like, see something, say something, or take care of people that you don't know, or, talking to our neighbors. The things that are not radical, more people are starting to do, because we feel like we need to know each other. We need to strengthen our safety nets, because more and more people are seeing that the government is not there to serve them. And then this is all manufactured consent. During the genocide, we, build up more awareness around, and now people are seeing it. I think too, the tension between, wondering why people haven't woken up to the state of our government until now is a frustration that I think a lot of people have on the left. But I have seen more and more people, kind of put that aside, not work backwards, not saying, where were you during the genocide? Where were you during Obama's years of the drone warfare program and being the deporter in chief? I think it's important to remind them that this did not start during Trump. But as organizers, I think what is effective now is like really taking this energy, getting people trained, getting people to feel confident, and taking those little steps, because we're going to need them to take much more. So I am also, though, being inspired by the creativity of the people in Portland, for example, using those big blow up costumes to get in the way of the ICE, and then seeing how people are activating outside of the detention centers. I think right now, if people are not if people are wondering what to do, where to go, I think in DC it's unavoidable. Like hyper local groups like Free DC or DC for Palestine. Groups who've been doing it for a while, like Code Pink, Palestinian Youth Movement, Harriet's Wildest Dreams. So I think being as visible as we can to get people plugged in has been effective because people have nowhere to go. But we are getting more inspiration as it's happening in other cities for us to keep going further and to take more action. But Afeni, you can speak more on it.
Yeah, what I would say is like, especially like thinking about the children that are missing school, thinking about the amount of people that aren't going to work, the amount of street vendors in DC who don't even feel comfortable like going out and making a living. I think at this moment, and I'm like, this is just like me freedom dreaming out loud. I can't say that anything like this is specifically happening in DC. I know there are some like smaller mutual aid efforts and like people helping to like deliver groceries and things like that. But like there does need to be some support for the children that can't go to school because of their families, because of the possible deportation. There does need to be some like with that supporting virtual learning. I know we learned during the pandemic that virtual learning is not always the best for a lot of students. And also like with broadband and things like that. But just how are we like sourcing community education for these children? I think also thinking about, like I said, making it culturally acceptable to buck back against ICE. So much of what, like, of course, like there are like, they have weapons or whatever, you know what I mean? But they are, you know, can't always speak for the state, but at this point, they're not just shooting a bunch of us out in the street. Especially if there's like a good crowd of people, like it is more likely to de-escalate. They're more likely to leave somebody alone if there's like a large crowd of people or like a decent crowd of people like actually being there to like bear witness, possibly put their bodies in between the person that they're trying to apprehend and ICE themselves. Um, because a lot of these people, like, let's just be so for real. A lot of these people that are, acting as ICE right now are not trained well. They are not trained law enforcement officers. They're not trained in crisis management. They are not trained in escalation or de-escalation. They're literally just grabbing people in like some of the sloppiest like ways possible. And I think that we need to take that lack of training to our advantage because they are very low skilled human beings at this point. Like as they get more reps in, like maybe they'll become like more effective. But right now at this time, this is the time where we can like start to seed within our own community, seed within our ground that not only are we able to, but it is our responsibility to put our bodies on the line, not only for our undocumented neighbors, but for each and every single one of us. Because say, they do get rid of all the undocumented people, say they get rid of like most of the documented brown people, say that's their solution. Then they're just going to keep going in and in and in until they get to their perfect white utopia, until they get to their perfect white Christian nationalist nation. Like they're not going to stop at the activists. They're not going to stop at undocumented people. They're not going to stop at people that are quote unquote anti-American and like loud about it. They are trying to purposefully contract this, like the economy and the population and make it more white and make it more Christian and make it more like culturally hegemonous, culturally hegemonic. So yeah, I think that some of it is yes, like actual putting systems in place, like addressing issues head on, putting rent parties together to make sure that undocumented families can pay their bills and like things like that, putting funds together, nonprofit organizations that have the ability to stipend organizers to like help and like sometimes you got to move the funds around, y'all. Sometimes you got to move the funds around. Help these people, get them some stipends, get them like credit them for something, like give them a virtual task to do and like figure out a way to give these people money. Because a lot of our organizations right now are also getting a lot of philanthropic funds. They're getting an influx of it because a lot of these funders are dumping their money off and trying to leave the country. So yeah, um, that's all. I think that's all I have. My little ramble.
Thanks, Afeni. And to expand on your point about the level of training, there's also a lot of inconsistencies because of that and the way ICE agents act. So, like, what you see in videos is not always the interaction you're going to have with ICE. Like there's been violent experiences with ICE, but also last Friday I was just walking home and ICE agents, pulled up on these window washers at DePaul University, barreled out of their cars, and then when I walked up and started filling them, they like ran away. So it's like there's these like they're weenies, a lot of them, and a lot of them also will bail. So it's like the least you could do is start filming them because they might leave that person alone. You actually could stop and intervene without even like really doing anything. But yeah, like Afeni and Olivia were saying, like actually interrupting these processes have worked in not getting someone kidnapped in that moment. Um, so to pass it on to Alderman Sigcho Lopez, what do you think has been working in Chicago? What do you want the people to know?
Yeah, thank you again. I think that the what you described, right, that I think that is being very helpful is people knowing that their cameras, their whistles actually do count, right? And when we count in big numbers, that's what I mentioned. When our community came in full display, and people, yes, they got to be courageous because, and when I asked the security guards, I mentioned when they were trying to get into this mall, they had Bobino and his mercenaries is all about a show for them, right? Because he looks like himself as a Nazi, dressed like a Nazi, walks like a Nazi, dressed up, has a haircut as a Nazi. He's a Nazi. But they are not really well prepared and well trained if it doesn't go as planned, they're freaked out. And that's I think the importance of having a lot of people because you don't want to be in a car alone with these mercenaries, right? So we understand the power of collective action, right? So the guards was the first line of defense, then the youth came in, and then everybody else came in. So what ended up happening is that they retrieved and and I think what they're trying was to provoke. That's the other thing, right? When nothing works, what these individuals do, because all they know, and I think like a lot of people in our community get to know them. There's a little man like Steve Miller. There's a little man who have unregulated emotions that trying to solve big world problems with violence, right? With like trying to like throwing tantrums. They're bullies, right? And I think that when we lose the fear, then people who they you can treat them for what they are, right? And I think it was very powerful to see our community in full display when U.S. citizens now are being arrested, and people are wondering, well, what the hell is doing ICE doing here? Then if it's all U.S. citizens, and now you know what they did? It was crazy. But what they did is say, you know what? It wasn't ICE. Then who the hell was there, right? That's how bad they are because they're even to lie. They're bad. They're bad. So these individuals, I think it is imperative that once we overcome the fear, there's nothing there, right? If we come in big numbers, so I think what we've seen powerful is look, young high school kids came out, they walked out of their high school the following day because they saw what they did to their classmates. And my kudos. And it's not now. That's what it was shameful what they were doing to DePaul students before Trump got elected, right? When they're trying to intimidate encampments, when they try to censor young kids. And what do we say? Don't do that. So that's why we got to continue to criticize the Democratic Party because they are not fighting for us. They are hiding when the whole people are seeing. And I say, look, I come from a traditional labor organizing, right? And what we say is like the bosses are best organizer, the fascists are the best organizer. But what we need to do is to document, to like look. I've seen like the whistles were so loud that I could hear them like blocks away. So you can hear it literally when people action come to power, right? So I tell you that mobilizations are powerful. Working collective action is powerful. And when you have a moment, I think that's I think the proudest I've been is when our community and we say, look, if you see a big convoy, you have vans, they even had a helicopter, a freaking helicopter in this action, right? And when people came in big numbers, with all of that, they left. And what we had, they had the big guns, and what we had is whistles and cameras, but a lot of people with us. So I think that we got to come to a mass movement, and we're challenging labor to be part of it. Immigrants, we are workers, we are natural allies, right? And we need to get more labor leaders to speak truth to power and not to be afraid to condemn what's going on in Gaza because it's definitely connected. At this point, if they don't see it, it's because they don't want to see it because it's there for all of us to see. The emperor has no clothes. So I think that what we're seeing is powerful is collective action. U.S. citizens, guards, they say, look, and I asked him, what drove you to do that? He said, like, because that's like family to me. If they take any people like here, they're family to me. And when the young people say, what's wrong with you to be beat up, knowing that you're going to beat up, it's because those are our neighbors. Those are our neighbors who are going to be taken. And if they take them, they won't be back. I know, and they told me that we know that if they take us, we can't come back. And they keep coming back with bigger numbers. It's like what Tupac said, right? They can kill this, they continue to kill the leaders or intimidate, whatever. But there's thousands of millions. There's a lot more of us. So I tell you that the mobilizations do matter. The documentation in court do matter. Because like Bobino finds himself like a dumbass saying, well, I didn't do any of that. And then, sir, where do you have the freaking tear gas in your hand? It's ridiculous at that point, right? It becomes ridiculous. And we know that they don't care about the courts, but it's also another. So we gotta give him no peace, no inch. We fight him on every inch in every part of our city and every part of our community. And that's the thing when we uplift the consciousness of people, then we know that people cannot be bought out, right? They can buy these mercenaries, but apparently they even have a hard time now buying even more mercenaries, for what I can hear. So I tell you that the people, so they're trying to make us think that we have no agency, that there's nothing we can do, that you just gotta let it go. It's not even your problem. And Bovino went farther. He said, well, you don't want to be brutalized, then don't protest. Well, you know what? We will continue to protest. And we're gonna show the world that civility that he wants to show, these guys have no civility. These guys don't care for the Constitution or morality. They shot a priest in his, they shot rubber bullets to a priest in his face. How these people are going to tell us that they care about morality or religion or anything like that? And furthermore, if you look at Steve Bannon, which is it's just interesting to watch their own contradictions, right? When they talk about the most dangerous people that they see are progressive Jews. That's what they tell us, that the most dangerous individuals that they see now are progressive Jewish that are going to be part of our coalition, that are naturally part of a coalition, because Nazis will never and should never lecture us about anti-Semitism. And we should put it right back at them. And should not be afraid about talking about these topics, because our Palestinian brothers and sisters were just brutalized right before us. And now it us. And next is going to be the Black community, as they did in South Shore. They were choking people over there. They have kids in Ziplocs. They have parents naked in the streets. And you know what? They're yet to show us one single gun that came out of that building. One of them. But you know what we found? Is that slumlord that was in cahoots with ICE was also the largest landlord in South Shore, and that's what Trump. So you start connecting the dots, and then you see that this divide and conquer is no more. And that's what I hope that we can get out of. The most powerful thing is the political education of people. So we also have to tell people, be part of the rapid response, get that political education so that we can connect the dots.
Thank you. Thank you. All of that was super important context and advice. And I think these rapid response teams that everyone's been mentioning are really tangible and easy ways to get involved, even if you don't consider yourself an organizer, you just live in a neighborhood that you're concerned about. They have rapid response teams in damn near every neighborhood in Chicago that you can join really easily. The trainings are like an hour. It's not as complicated as you think. It is a low barrier to entry, and I think it is the least we could all be doing, because they actually do interrupt these kidnappings in a real way. And I think it might be good training for when the National Guard comes to Chicago. So thank you all for all of those ways that concrete steps that people can take. I think it's important for us to understand the scale of all of this, because SNAP benefits were just cut off over the weekend. So 42 million Americans who use SNAP benefits to feed themselves and their families will not have access to those resources because of the government shutdown, because the money ran out. Meanwhile, Trump is finding money to bomb boats off the coast of Venezuela. Meanwhile, like Byron said, advertising on television, 50K bonuses for people who want to sign up to join ICE. And they're running around and they're saying that the ICE agents aren't paid right now, but they're running around in rental cars from the airport. So I wonder who's paying for those, if not the government, during a shutdown. They are still advertising these bonuses. They're still running ads on television for all of these things. So the money is there, certainly, just not for us. So not for the people. And people need to know, like I've said, it's not just happening in our cities. Portland, Memphis, it's all a staging ground for something a lot bigger. With a military budget that has endless resources. The textbook budget for every year is around $1 trillion, but we know now that the US spends about $2 trillion every year on the military through other things, and that includes the ICE budget as well. So there's endless resources for the Pentagon budget, and people are losing SNAP benefits and healthcare. People's premiums are doubling right now as we go into applying for healthcare season. So what is the way forward? And we've talked about already about like the immediate what to do. But what about down the line? What kinds of organizing needs to take place to protect our communities and cities against fascism, whether it be Trump's brand or someone else's? So I know this is a broad question, but I'm just interested in all of your thinking on this subject.
Yeah, what I would say is that they're using food as a weapon of war. Much like they use food as a weapon of war in Gaza, they're using food as a weapon of war against working class and low income people and poor people here in America. What they are seeking to do is push as many people as possible. They want to push them into a corner. Your options are this: join ICE and get that $55,000 signing bonus. Go ahead and get you some of that socialism. Go ahead and get you some of that college funded and all that other shit that we keep invading countries for it. But if you join ICE, if you join the military, and if you join the police force, all of a sudden that socialism is cool for you as long as you will sell your humanity and dehumanize your neighbors in the process. As long as you will sell your soul in order to become an active part of the US empire, they are going to starve you. Jerome Powell said in 2022 that they are going to intentionally shrink the job market. He said the workers, that great resignation. He said the workers got too much power. We don't know what none of that's about. But what we're going to be doing over the next couple of years is cutting rates and cutting jobs. Cutting rates and cutting jobs. And what have they been doing? People graduating from college can't get a job, all this other stuff. People applying to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, can't even get an interview. So as the part of the larger agenda towards whatever like intentional chaos they are trying to sow within our communities, they are also trying to get yourself and other people that are in your families, your neighbors, to turn against their community in order for their own survival. They're hoping that we will be hyper individualistic enough. They're hoping that we are clinging on to capitalism enough. They're hoping that we will be hungry enough to say, you know what? Maybe I can start picking up people from graduations. Maybe I can start picking up grandmas from dialysis on her way home. You know what I mean? So I think there's like that part of it. And as far as like what we can do and what we should be looking towards in the future, at this point in time, if you are an organizer, you should be doing everything in your power to do leadership development, deep leadership development within your communities. We cannot be the only people with the secret sauce. And let me tell you, the sauce is not so motherfucking secret. The speed and the power that we builds at the speed of our relationships. It builds at the speed of our trust. It builds at the speed of our courage. You get that courage by getting to know your neighbors. You get that courage by finding collective and shared values. You get that courage by figuring out who has what skills and how can we trade them. By making sure that your neighbors are fed, to make sure that people that are disabled in your neighborhood have their medicines on time, making sure they have their food on time, showing that if the government is not going to fill the void, then the community will fill the void for us. Because at the end of the day, the only antidote to capitalism is community. It is socialism. It is communism. It is indigenous ways of being and relating to each other. And that is why they're trying so hard to not only force us into these dehumanizing jobs, but they're trying to wipe humanity out of art and culture and out of the workforce with AI and take your clean drinking water while they do it. So at this point in time, like I know like this might be a bit of an echo chamber, but the thing that people that are in this echo chamber can do that is going to be the most important is to continue to talk to people that do not agree with you, to find points of unity with people that you might not have been allies with, but guess what, baby, we have to figure out how to be allies today. Because if we do not figure out how to get our populism, our community together, then like, I think somebody else said it earlier. If we don't take control of ourselves, they're gonna take that shit for us. And we can already see where that's about to head and where that's about to go. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not trying to go back to nobody's plantation. So yeah, go ahead and let's go ahead and stand up. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Afeni. Yeah, if you're not an organizer, we can teach you. Like there are people where you live and also online. If you're shy, get over it, baby. It's time to go. But Olivia, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm like so yeah, resonate with everything that Afeni is saying, and an extension of our last conversation, and curious again to go back to the local, is that like that relational organizing. I mean, we use this term organizing, and some people come to me like, organizing what? Your closet? What does that mean? And it's just like, if you, anyone can be part of this. Anyone has to be part of this. So like we see the care economy. If you cook, if you have a car and you do rides, if you are good at art and don't consider yourself an artist, there's like art build after art build after art build. Art is a really good entryway. Like as organizers too, how do we bring people in ways that build community, build a sense of care and help us recharge? And so all of that, I think we're really honing in on like the nature of like how hyper local, how these, like how hyper local we have to be because we are all local. But what we haven't touched on yet is that being in DC, being in the belly of the beast, we are also the nation's capital, right? Of course, like we are here on stolen land, and no, it's no wonder we're funding a genocide in Gaza because this country started on a genocide. But we also have a particular responsibility and duty. And you know, as Code Pink, we are people who go into the Capitol and have had confronted Kristi Noem, confronted Pete Hegseth the day that the National Guard and ICE had occupied our city. It was the same day that they were in there talking about the budget. And so we do have this access right now to be able to walk inside these halls of Congress. As much as we say talk to our neighbors and we love our neighborhoods, war criminals are also our neighbors, right? So Stephen Miller, who we were referring to before, people were just chalking on the side of his road, and he was so outraged, he moved. And you know, we saw that we did the encampment outside of Anthony Blinken's house last year, putting on that pressure. We disrupted Trump's dinner when it was Trump and Rubio and Hegseth and JD Vance, because again, they want us to be afraid. They want to give the public this illusion of safety. And in the very incident of the restaurant with Trump, he was there to say the city is safe again. We have solved crime. It's beautiful. People are finally going out into the streets or to eat in restaurants. All of these are not only lies, but they're perpetuating that the illusion of the U.S. and the illusion of empire is crumbling, right? And so that is when, instead of going into despair, like Marian Kaba's quote, this can radicalize us. And when people hear radicalize, sometimes, again, because of U.S. propaganda, they hear that in a negative way. But what about radical love? What about not just taking care of our neighbors when it's trendy, because a lot of people are excited to be out in the streets when ICE first came, but it is sustained, it is long, they want to tire us out. How are we continuing this stamina? And it's not easy, you know, I mean, it's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take compromise. You know, we talk a lot about like indirect action, disrupting business as usual. And, you know, we really have to focus on how are we focusing on boycotts, you know, the economic veins. And we see that as successes, right? You just Starbucks, for example, the amount of people who boycotted Starbucks for the genocide now actually has uplifted a ton of local coffee shops in our neighborhoods. So we also want to be uplifting like what we can be doing instead that does activate people to keep going. We're talking about the like indigenous ways of doing things. You can grow sweet potatoes in the cracks in your sidewalk where weeds come up. and it's like a little skill exchange. So like how are we the same practices we might think to use because the climate crisis and we want to upcycle and not buy new things, like consumerism, capitalism. But I especially think, and as we're talking long term, we have to be making those connections. What are the roots of migration? The U.S. going creating another war, that's going to only create more people that have to flee. So it's like they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth when they're saying America first, or America first, but give all our money to Ukraine. America first, but give all of our money to Israel. America first, but and all of these things. So I do think we have to surpass the propaganda, because it's going to be harder and harder for people to get through this, maybe. And we don't want to overwhelm people as well, even though what's going on is overwhelming. We want to overwhelm them in the world that they want instead. And that really does mean like being relational, but especially if you live in places where these people are really right in front of you. I do think like we are as Code Pink, nonviolent, and the biggest of our disruptions have been solely with our voice and a sign, and that has created shaming and keeping people accountable. And we're still after the Democrats as we were the Republicans, but right now we're inviting the Democrats to actually be an opposition party that they claim to be, but they have to prove it. We don't have their trust based on any and all of their policies before this. So what are our alternatives? And we're seeing that within our communities.
Thank you, Olivia. I'll pass it to Alderman Ticha Lopez.
Thank you. And I think both sisters did a great job in terms of the stuff that we can be doing. What I'll say is that I know that as we think globally, right, we are thinking about what's going on in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. We got to act locally. So that's the thing, the challenge, not get overwhelmed, but everything's going on in the world, which is interconnected. And that is the challenge. And we do have the biggest fraudsters, right? That America first is just such a laughable thing. Talk about like they gave Milei, which is the lunatic in Argentina, $40 billion. It's just crazy what they talk about, right? So I think it's important. That is what I'm a big fan of Code Pink, because it is making sure that we challenge these coalitions to be formed, but coalitions that can be formed at the local level. Community gets formed in the most simple, organic way, in the university, in your block, in your neighborhood, in your church, wherever you are. You make a huge difference. But and there's not a rapid response. Create one. You become the difference that you want to see in the world. I think that today, what I said is that we cannot go back to a norm. I think that's what these Nazi fascists are always romanticizing, a past that was never good for working people. They romanticize about going back to where? Going back to the times where they just bomb entire countries, like in Chile, when they bomb and then they literally kill the democratically elected president, that basically truncated the efforts to have democracy in the whole continent, right? Only to install bloody dictators. And that's what we see, is to see the chickens coming home to roost. When we know we cannot kick in the can down the road, because the fight is now. The fight has found us. The fight is here. Like, look, in Chicago, we also have here, this is the home of contrast, right? We have the Chicago boys, but you also had the first Black progressive mayor in the city of Chicago, Mayor Washington, that was elected in a rainbow coalition. So history is not dead. They cannot kill history. And it's important that we activate our networks now. The resistance is real, and the resistance is possible. It is a vocal, loud, but a small minority that wants to take us back to 100 years ago, when they want to make lynchings again possible. They want to make sure that they continue to dehumanize anybody and everybody who doesn't look like they do. But it's laughable when they talk about religion, when they talk about the right wing. It is such full of hypocrisy and contradictions that I think this political education in our country is more important than ever. They want to take away public education, public health, keep us enslaved, keep us exploited, keep us separated, keep us in silos. And what do we do to counter that? The opposite: connect, reconnect, build coalition. But one thing that we've been very clear: we're not building coalition, for instance, with Mayor 1%, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, because he does not believe in the humanity of all of us. He doesn't. He has shown it with his actions. And J.B. Pritzker is not too far behind it. So it is important that we push a coalition of working people that push these billionaires, these fascists, right, that I think are trying to form their own set of coalitions with Zionists, particularly, right? And not knowing that they will also be persecuted. So it is important that in this moment in time, in this moment in history, we connect in our own communities, in our own actions, building these coalitions of working people and challenge them. I always hear like Governor Pritzker with his nice TikToks, but he has a hard time from going from the TikTok to the policy, right? And we say, how are you gonna challenge Trump with TikToks when you keep a GOP tax code in our state? So you also have to activate. So people say, well, what is important to go on the legislative side? Well, as a former organizer, a labor organizer, we must challenge every single space and every single table until we can build a unity that they claim to have, but they don't have. A billionaire who denies, and by the way, the reason why the billionaire governor doesn't like or black progressive mayor is because he was for the ceasefire. It's because he stands up for people. It's because he stands up with immigrants. It's because he does the right thing consistently. So that is why important that we build this coalition. It's going to happen tomorrow in New York. Bet you it's going to happen. So we now need to meet or cities or working people unite more and more. And I tell you that they're going wrong and scared because it's Steve Miller, Naomi Christie, and all these fascists, they're already moving their homes next to military bases. That's how scared they are. They are scared of the working people. So the moment, and we don't have to, we have whistles, we have cameras, but we have something that is more important than anything else. We have each other, that we are not alone in this struggle. And if history is any indication of where we're going to land, we know that dictators fall and the working people rise. And those human rights violations have been persecuted, never forgotten, and we will not allow impunity. And in the moment of time is organizing in the workplace, organizing in our corners, organizing everywhere. This is you don't have to be you to be an organizer. You need to be you. You need to be stand for your values and principles. They don't care about morals. They don't care about the Constitution. They care about money, and they are also pedophiles to top of it. So we got to protect our children. We got to protect our young people. We got to protect each other. So I'll say that the moment to fight right now is now. Look, in the midst of all of this, Chicago passed a resolution to take Cuba outside of the list of terrorists. When everybody said, oh, you cannot do
Yeah.
that. You cannot do. No, yes, we can, and we will. Right? And I think this is why we got to help each other out wherever in the world. Americans are courageous people. We got to get past that small group of people that don't represent us so that people can see the best in ourselves. And the best in ourselves is the love and care that we have another. So hate and violence are not going to cut it. We are the working people. We are the 99%.
Thank you all so much. And I want to wrap up soon and be respectful of people's time. But before I do that, I just want to open up to all three of you. How can people stay up to date on the work you do? What org should they follow? What's your handle? I'll do Afeni, Olivia, and then Alderman CJ Lopez.
Hey, so I'm actually off the internet for the next 2 months, but if you want to follow me and wait till next year, all of my socials are Facts and Fire. But until next year, I just really want to leave y'all with the fact that like our safety exists in our access to resources and our dignity. So the more we think about that, the more we shift our safety away from the thoughts of being a police and all this other stuff, the more likely it is that we'll be able to have that cultural shift, that courageous shift that we need to act collectively. So yeah, I love
Thank
you.
you,
Follow me.
Afeni. Olivia.
Yeah, and I think also just the last thing, I like looking at global movements and people around the world, especially in the global South, who have led the way and have reignited us, whether Colombia, Korea, parts of South America, all over the place, and of course the people of Gaza. As we take out our phones and film, we know that every person in Gaza was a journalist because Israel killed so many of the journalists, and it made everyone that. So just those little things to plug into. Yeah, you can follow me at O Danucci on Instagram as well as Code Pink DC. We're gonna put some links in the chat to get involved with some upcoming events.
Thank you.
And for us, definitely thank you to Code Pink. I'm a big fan. So sign me up as a member if you have events in DC, wherever you want. You count me in as well. Here in Chicago, my handle is Sigcho 425, SIGCHO 425. Also, we have Pilsen Defense and Access, Puño, many rapid response teams. Also, please follow our community and our efforts for resistance. And let's continue to fight for each other's humanity. I'm really proud of being in Chicago in this moment. I'm really grateful for city for fighting, and any other city, DC, LA, all Washington DC, New York, all of you. I'm grateful for the resistance, and I'm grateful to be in this moment in history with all of you, and looking forward to keep fighting together. This is a fight for our lives, and I'm very proud to be with you tonight.
Thank you. And I could say, I think I'm speaking for a lot of people. I'm really, really happy and honored to have you in our city council and defending working people all over our city. So thank you so much. So like we've said all night, the struggles that we're seeing in our cities is connected to the struggles all over the world, because the US is the reason for so much pain and suffering happening all over the world, from Gaza to Venezuela. So our fight to cut the Pentagon isn't just to help us, it's to help the whole world. So international solidarity is critical in moments like these. And whenever I get down in the dumps and I get, a little lick of despair in me, this is the quote I want to leave you all with from Che Guevara. He said, "I envy you. You North Americans are very lucky. You are fighting the most important fight of all because you live in the belly of the beast." So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Make sure to sign our petition to cut the Pentagon, join a Code Pink chapter. We're doing really, really important organizing all over the country. So please get involved. And thank you so much for being with us. And thank you to our amazing guests.